NEMESIS is a consultancy and a creative studio founded by Martti Kalliala, better? A designer, architect, and musician, and Emily Siegel, a writer, artist, and trend forecaster. NEMESIS operates in the fields of brand strategy, design, creative direction, cultural research, and language. In addition to their client work, they also develop self-initiated cultural research projects that explore new creative economies. Their clients and partners encompass a wide range from emerging technology companies to established luxury brands, including Art Basel, Louis Vuitton, Nike, Off-White, Pan, Sector Finance, The Serpentine, Sub, True Religion, the late Virgil Abloh, and Yuan Dao, and others. The third member of NEMESIS team is Lucas Mascatello, an artist, writer, and strategist. Martti will be joined on stage by Manca Renko, a historian, essayist, precarious academic, and editor. She's also the editor-in-chief of Cukr magazine, where she did an interview with Emily for its third issue. So please give a warm welcome to Martti and Manca.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Aydin, for the introduction. Welcome, Martti. So happy to have you here. We were introduced as if we were going to have a discussion about design, and just before we went on stage, when we went through some questions, Martti said, you know, there is only one question that I really don't know what to say, and it was the question about design. So, sorry, it will not be so much of a design talk, although every experience is sort of designed, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
When I did an interview with your colleague Emily, that you co-founded NEMESIS with, we were talking about the concept of generation. It was also the topic of that issue of Cukr, which is still available if anyone's interested. And Emily said that she doesn't really believe in the category of generation, but she does believe in a generation like that she thinks the generation is more or less a marketing category. But while I was reading your work, your essays, your previous essays that you wrote in last or 5 years ago or so, you keep returning to the term of generation, especially you write about millennials in terms of clubbing, Burning Man, real estate, and so on. So I wonder, what would your take on generation be?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't read the interview with Emily. What I would imagine that she meant with that is generations in marketing often, they're kind of like, they're fake. Like generational marketing in the sense that it existed, I know, some decades ago. It doesn't really work because like generations in the sense that they perhaps existed 50 years ago, meaning that there's like a extremely coherent group of people, with like a very coherent set of experiences and references. That doesn't really exist anymore. But I think, I mean, yeah, I hadn't thought about it before you mentioned it. I still think like generations it's like a fairly useful kind of social category to like thinking, because they are, in the sense, they are still like more real than some like other ways to like group people. Like generations, it is a fact that certain people were born at like a certain time, and inevitably like through the fact they kind of go through like they do. There's some like baseline reality or like set of like transformations in like whether like social, cultural, economic, so forth that they kind of go through. So in some sense. In that sense, like generations like do form this. I think it's like in some like ontological sense. I think like generations are like real. And I guess what the particular generation that I've maybe or maybe me, I've been referring to is like millennials, which is. Yeah, I guess I'm a millennial. I'm like an elderly millennial, like a geriatric millennial. So, and like a lot of the writing and like also like thinking that we've done, and also like the commercial work that we've done has kind of addressed like millennials as like more like as a psychographic than a demographic. Like demographic, like refers to these kind of facts, like people of a certain age, like gender, location, whatever. But psychographic is, it's more like it's like a psychological profile. Or let's say like imaginary, like psychological profile. And like the millennials that like I've been like writing about, I think this is more like a psychographic category. And for me, I guess it's been like interesting, or like it's like been like interesting thing to observe because, as I said, I'm like the older end of millennials. So I was like I'm like a person who kind of came of age during a time when like youth culture, for example, was like fully manufactured by Gen X. And so I kind of like grew up in like a world that was like manufactured by like Gen X, and like like I grew up like kind of so like in some sense like like under the rules like set by a generation, and like of course and then what I like observed, like there's this like group of people, like let's say younger millennials, that then like experience this kind of this like rupture, like kind of like generation like rupture, which I think like has like pretty like kind of like clear kind of like cultural like implications, ramifications, and like by that I mean like specifically like when I kind of grew up, like for example like youth wasn't really like scalable. Like the thing like the way you build up like social capital or like cultural capital, like the way you gained status or became like important was like you kind of had to put in the work. You kind of had to be there. You had to go to shows. You had to participate in the scene. You had to like buy the records. Like the whole like original kind of indie authenticity like cycle was like very much like in force. And then and like I when I was like 20, that was like those were definitely like the rules set for me. Like you couldn't really like somehow like scale up youth in a way. You just had to put in the work to gain whatever like status or influence or something. Whereas then with the advent of social media, or like, let's say like the internet at large, but then like more specifically social media, like from let's say 2007 onwards, there was suddenly this bypass, this like a way to like shortcuts. So like things could like there was there was suddenly this like kind of infinite scale to youth. Like like just youth itself like suddenly had a lot more. There was like more, let's say, like social or cultural capital attributed to youth, which wasn't really possible to like scale up in a way that during the time when I was younger. And like I think like a lot of the things I've been like writing about, like and like or like what we've been observing, and what we kind of specifically attribute to like millennials, I think there are like a lot of those like things are related to this kind of like shift.
Whenever I think of my generation or what formed the generation I belong to, which is also a millennial, is I think of MTV. MTV as something that has deeply influenced me as a person. And I also think it has influenced us as a generation, regardless of where we were living post-Berlin, fall of the Berlin Wall. But and you also belong to this generation, but then at the same time, you with NEMESIS also did the cultural study of MTV itself. So I'm wondering, what role did MTV really play, and does it still have a role in our society?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. Actually, we didn't do like a cultural study of MTV itself. We did some, we consulted MTV on, or kind of did some research and like consulting on the VMAs, which is like the Video Music Awards, which was this, like prime asset, like intellectual property that MTV had that used to be super important, but like obviously is like much less important now. Yeah, so I mean personally, yeah, I grew up like during the, you know, as you know, as everyone of my age, like during the time that like you know, like MTV's like influence grew. Like it was, yeah, I would say, yeah, it was like it was important to me in a sense that like it was like important to like everyone of my generation who had access to like cable TV. But I actually think, like personally, I think there's a bit of like I think actually like the end of the 90s, which is really like the, I mean, you know, it's also the time when like CD sales, it's actually fun, like CD sales hit like the peak of CD sales was in 99, like just before, you know, like it all kind of crashed down. Same thing for MTV. I think like the kind of like peak MTV was like when they roll out these like regional ones, like regional MTVs. Like I think MTV Nordic was like an incredible, incredible channel, and it was like I think it was also kind of like peak like Gen X, like indie culture, but somehow in this you know in this like as like a broadcast channel, like which is kind of like insane to like think about now. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like like our thinking of MTV, I think it's actually like a very good example of what I just like talked about in terms of like this shift of like suddenly like youth or culture become like scalable. I think MTV is like a direct kind of victim, like victim of it, or like maybe not like a victim, but it's just like a great example of like what happened. Like if you think of like the heyday of it, like it was, you know, it was like a broadcast channel. It basically like had a monopoly to like showing music videos. It had like a monopoly to creating celebrity and fame. There was like I mean, I don't know, I'm just like making up these numbers, but let's say there were like 200 artists on like rotation on like MTV. It was like a fairly like small group of artists who were getting like visibility. It was a very like legible field of artists and very kind of like consistent. It had like MTV itself has this very consistent set of characters, like the presenters. Although I mean, of course, there's like it's noteworthy that of course like American MTV was like different than the the one that we had in Europe. So I guess most of us were exposed to the one that was aired from London. But in a way, well, what happened with MTV is like, well, at some point they realized, yeah, they should make their own programs, and then that's when like, Beavis and Butthead happened and Jackass. Then they realized, oh, actually like producing our own IP is like way better than like showing these videos, because they have to like, of course, like pay royalties to the like for showing videos. So they just like shifted to like just showing more of their own material, and then they accidentally also pretty much like invented reality TV, and that's when they basically like pivoted from like music to like reality TV. So I think that's kind of where they also like lost a lot of the authority that they had in music. But like if you think of like MTV now, I mean it kind of like barely exists in Europe, but like in the States it's still the word cable TV is like still pretty much in every, or like in most homes, is still, is still there. But the kind of conditions, yeah, like you just like the conditions, like the distribution of fame, like has just like shifted and like fame and just like media in general has like shifted so like fundamentally that it's very. Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's like definitely like an open question. Like what is MTV now? Because if you think of like I don't know, like let's say the early '90s or like late '80s, there was, yeah, like let's say these 200 artists that were like on rotation. Like everyone could know these artists. It was like a legible field of celebrity. Now, I would argue, or actually like we argue in this work that we did, that this overall more attention being given to famous people, but at the same time, there are many more like famous people than there were like in the 80s. So like the field of like fame and celebrity has like just like like fragmented in a way that like just like like can't be captured like by like a broadcast entity like MTV. So doing this, like the kind of like scaling that have like the kind of digital scaling of culture and influence and like fame. Like a thing like MTV, I don't know, it's like questionable. Like what is MTV? But like what's like the role of like a kind of like a gatekeeping like broadcast entity like such as MTV?
But if and just at the beginning of your answer, you mentioned that how the sales of CDs went up. Later today or later in the evening, you have a gig with Amnesia Scanner, which is your band. And you just published in the summer your third album. And I'm wondering what is album today, or what is a CD today, or how did the way we listen to music change through internet, but also through COVID, through live gigs that you have, and so on. What is your experience with listening and producing music?
I mean that's a good question. I think like what's an album? Like an album, is like a funny thing because of course it's kind of born from the kind of limitations of the original medium, which is like an LP. Like LP could fit on like a certain amount of like material on it. So that's kind of where there's like 45-minute, 1 hour like length of an album kind of like came from. And like if like a typical pop song is like 3 minutes, that's kind of like like where the 10 to like whatever 15 tracks kind of like came from. And there's this kind of like path dependency, like like a lot of, as designers know, like path dependency is like real. So like somehow like this like form has just like stuck. But I guess at the same time there is something. It clearly works on some level. Like maybe putting 10 songs together, like forms like usually like a meaningful like whole. But yeah, I mean, for Amnesia Scanner, which is me and Vilhelm Heimala, who's sitting there, like we like since we started like around like 10 years ago, I think really like one of the main drivers of us starting the project was to kind of somehow like break this like pattern, or like somehow break the standard formats in which like music was like released and how it was like distributed. So like really like since the beginning, like we like experimented with like different ways of distributing music, like online through various kinds of obscure and like less obscure, like kind of like digital like strategies, some ways to do it like physically and so forth. Also like new formats, like releasing music as like an audio player rather than like an album and so forth. I think that's also like there's also like an interesting shift that's happened since then. I think 10 years ago, it was definitely like a lot easier to do because I think a lot of those like, there was like a bit more like fertile ground. I think a lot of like those like experiments hadn't, I think like there's been like a lot more experimentation like in that regard, like in the last 10 years. So I think finding like interesting like distribution strategies or forms now is like, it's a lot harder. But at some point, we realized, that there is, to like build like a sustainable career, or maybe let's say not career, but like a presence and in the music industry, that we just have to accept this path dependency of like the album. Like an album is still this like, it's kind of like this unit of attention. And for us to be able to have like a presence in that system or whatever, like attention economy, maybe we need to put out albums. And it's been, I don't know. I'm like, I think an album is actually like a fairly meaningful like way to put out music in. But I mean, at the same time, I have like no idea if like anyone like listens to albums or like what the experience of like what like typical, what like the median or average experience of like listening to the music it's very interesting. I have like really like no idea how like music is.
I listened to all 3 albums of yours yesterday in a row, and I love how you had to deconstruct everything in order to start making very good pop. I love how popish the last album sounds. I love how, like, I love I think the album makes sense in a way that you see how you progress. It's sort of an archive of an idea. So I think in that sense, like for me yesterday, it made sense. For example.
Yeah. I think, I think it's a very kind of classic kind of creative arc that you have. That you kind of you want to break certain conventions and rules, and you take it to a kind of like an extreme of, I don't know, deconstruction or collage or something, which was also happening. Like a lot of our peers were also like kind of participating in that, and at some point we felt like it's kind of reached like a point where actually taking the opposite turn, like actually is perhaps like more interesting. I think that's also when where the kind of the pop turn of NEMESIS kind of like happened.
Did you think at the end of the month you have a gig in Berghain where Skrillex is going to be the headliner? Did you think 10 years ago that you and Skrillex will share the floor?
Well, I definitely didn't have this active thought like 10 years ago. No, I think it's like, it is kind of interesting. Like, I think there was like, now when I think of, maybe there was like kind of two paths that were kind of like forking. I mean, I guess we and Skrillex and a lot of other artists, of course, were kind of like, there was like a certain kind of like digital like maximalism that was there. I mean, I'm not saying that was like how we necessarily described it, or like what we just what we would have exclusively kind of like focused on. But I do think maybe there was kind of like a fork, and I do think there was definitely like some like distinctions between, let's say like indie versus mainstream versus underground versus, I don't want to say like subculture, but I think like some of those distinctions were, or like some like remnants of those distinctions were still like definitely like more relevant like 10 years ago, and maybe some degree of like snobbery that like, or like not snobbery, but like but like kind of came through that, was it was more important like 10 years ago. And I think like now there's definitely been this this flattening or like collapse. I think like a pretty like permanent collapse of those like distinctions. So somehow, having Bill, who just like like books Skrillex, isn't like, it somehow wasn't like shocking out. I was like, when I saw the line, I was like, okay, this is sick, and like but somehow at the same time like so natural.
You said snobbery, and I will talk about luxury now. One of the projects, the art exhibition you did with NEMESIS 5 years ago, I think, in Guggenheim, Bilbao, is entitled Heaven, Luxury Equals Death. And I suggest to every one of you that you listen to the 10-minute narrative, that you can find it online. And in this text, you talk about what it means, what is luxury, and etc., etc. And one of the points you make is also that middle class is obviously shrinking. There is less and less middle class, but the middle class aesthetics is broader than ever. And just as well, I was listening to this yesterday, I saw a clip that many of you who use internet probably also did, from the new documentary of David Beckham. And of those of you who didn't see it, it's Victoria Beckham, Posh Spice, talks about, she says, we were a very working class family. And then David Beckham says, please be honest. And then Victoria says, I am honest. And then David says, no, you're not. And then David says, what car did your father drive you to school with? And she said, that's not an easy question. And he says, yeah, it is an easy question. And then she said, Rolls-Royce. And Rolls-Royce was never a working class car. Obviously, I don't know anything about cars, but this much I know. And I also know that it's not a middle class car. But then at the same time, I feel like this, that in the past 5 years, maybe this narrative from the mainstream middle class is shrinking has come to we're all working class?
Yeah, I was like thinking about it earlier. It's like, yeah, I think there are kind of like multiple, there are like a few like different dynamics that are happening like in parallel. I think there's, well, like first, yeah, okay. So it's like a fact like the middle class is, yeah, it is like it's shrinking. Like wealth distribution is like following a power law, and like the middle class is, yeah, like just as like as a demographic is like definitely like shrinking. At the same time, these like symbols of like the middle class, where it's like owning a house or like kitchen renovation,
Right, infinite kitchen island.
Yeah, exactly. Or I don't know, like SUVs or like whatever they are somehow like they're like less, the less attainable they are, the more, or like let's say like they're becoming like less attainable, but at the same time they're being kind of like normalized as like the as like let's say like regular like acceptable consumer choices for classes above the middle class, also like meaning like the billionaire class, like Elon Musk lives in like whatever, like a normal little house in, I don't know where he lives, but somewhere in, actually I don't remember where he lives, but anyway, Warren Buffett lives in like the same house in Ohio, which he has lived in whatever for 6 years or something. So there's this kind of like I mean, I guess it's like rooted in some kind of like Protestant like ethic, where like what's considered like reasonable and acceptable like through like the kind of consumption choices of the middle class or the former middle class are now seen as kind of acceptable or like reasonable consumption choices for the upper classes. But at the same time, while the actual kind of economic conditions of the former middle class, especially as like youngest members, like millennials, are kind of deteriorating, like things like functional homelessness, which is van life, or I don't know, like tinned fish, which which is, I would say, like an inferior product to like fresh fish, are somehow like elevated to these kind of like high status like consumption choices. So it's like, in a weird way, what used to be considered middle class is somehow like, or the kind of consumption choices and like aesthetic markers that used to be considered middle class are kind of like moving up, and at let's say at the bottom of the range, like the middle class is like things such as like van life are somehow becoming part of like the kind of consumption kind of palette of the middle class. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, I'm just like quoting some very like standard like social like theory. It's been this has been like this is kind of like being like a pattern that's been pretty prevalent for like the last 100 years, where like the kind of professional class like doesn't want like ostentatious wealth, they rather like hide it, and so they rather consume objects that are like more similar to like what the middle class consumes. Maybe they're of the higher quality, but like still like they basically like look like the middle classes. Whereas like if someone from like a lower like wealth bracket kind of becomes becomes wealthy, they don't want to, they don't want to participate in that. They want to like, of course, like express like the newfound wealth. And I think the more extreme and the more kind of zero sum like wealth distribution like becomes, the more like this kind of like consumption becomes also like also like influences how like let's say like what you would have formerly like thought of like middle class kids, like how they consume. Like, so I'm basically meaning like how, I don't know, like luxury goods, but like worn in the way that like a drill artist like would like, or maybe actually drill artists don't like necessarily wear luxury, because let's say like your average like hip hop artist like wears them. That's become like more of like an acceptable kind of like fashion like strategy for like a middle class kid. So I think so. Okay, so this, I think that was like a very like convoluted way to like describe these dynamics. But I think, yeah, there is like a very like interesting shift, both like up and down, like in certain like kind of working class kind of consumption patterns or like an aesthetic cues and middle class ones. And it's like I think that field is becoming like much harder to read. And I think it also has like some pretty interesting like ramifications for like, I mean, for brands and like, you know, like in a kind of a commercial sense.
It says on your website, NEMESIS website, that Heaven Luxury Equals Death is part of the probably never to be finished essay about space.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, you're an architect. We didn't say that before, that you by profession are an architect, which obviously means that you think about space a lot. But why is it never going to be finished? Is it because space is so rapidly changing, or because one can never finish an essay about such a vast topic?
Yeah, I wish that was like the answer. Actually, it was like it was a bit more like lame. I think what the essay was supposed to be about was, so yeah, I'm an architect by education, and then I kind of shifted into whatever, like a more, I don't know, this other, I don't know, dimension of doing work, like where I'm now. I just, amongst my peers, you know, like young architects who were somehow disillusioned with the profession, were like somehow like trying to find like another way to practice and like position themselves. I think there was like a shared idea or perhaps like illusion, which I also definitely like kind of like bought into, was that there's that space in like a metaphorical sense, like, I don't know, like the space, discursive space, or like the space of ideas or whatever, was somehow like, it was like a thing you could like operate or like intervene in using the same tools you would utilize, like which like an architect would use for like actual like physical space. So I was like kind of at the time, I was like kind of wanted to like write this like spicy essay, like as some kind of like a takedown of my like former self and like other like young architects who were somehow like caught up in this illusion. But I think now it's a bit late. I think like, you know, things caught up, and I don't think anyone's really like, you know.
But why did you? We started this conversation before. Why did you stop? Why don't you write anymore? You're a very good writer.
I have 2 kids, and I have 2 jobs already. So.
Do any of you have a question? Maybe you can think about it. With NEMESIS, every year you make a memo at the end of the year or beginning of the year, or however, about one topic that you think is the most pressing or interesting, and so on. And one of them is also experience economy, and this is also something that you referred to a lot and thought about a lot, and so on. And could you share some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we wrote this piece. It's actually on this website, which is nemesis.global. We wrote a piece called "The Umami Theory of Value." It came out. It came out like right when the pandemic hit. Like, when was it? Like 2020. It was kind of. It was like an accident that like it came out at the same time as the pandemic happened, but it was kind of like written before that as a kind of elegy, or we kind of sense that like there is like a period that's coming to an end. Like say, like started maybe in 2008 after the financial crisis, and somehow we felt like was like peaking like around, I don't know, 2019, like 2020, which was really like fueled with like kind of easy money, like flooding culture, flooding markets, like flooding like life. I mean, I don't mean that everyone was like receiving this like this easy money, but there was definitely like this over investment into things. Or there was like too much money, like chasing too few real things to like invest in. So like a lot of that money went into like building like narratives, like stories about the future, which like a lot of startups were like doing. They weren't really actually working on, let's say, like an actual product. They were more like like concocting attractive stories about the future in which the product or the thing that they were working on would like exist and like make sense. And the other kind of malinvestment was into, or like what we consider was like a malinvestment, was into kind of experiences of like kind of like questionable status. And okay, it's a long piece. I'm not sure if I can like summarize like the whole thing here, but we felt that there was like definitely like a breaking point in the kind of nonsensicality of like the kind of experiences that we were seeing. So like in 2019, 2020, like there were just more and more bizarre like branded experience like across like hospitality, like in food culture, and like in clubbing, and like in wellness and so forth, where like more and more kind of bizarre and like nonsensical elements were kind of like brought together just purely for the sake of novelty. And like somehow we felt that okay, there's like a limit to this novelty. There's like that it's kind of like a emperor's like new clothes like moment, that there's like a kind of like a cultural breaking point where we just like will realize that none of this makes sense, and like none of these things are legible anymore. And like just like one like kind of concrete example, I think there was like right before the pandemic happened, there was like a performance art weekend at the Gropiusbau in Berlin, which was sponsored by BTS, like the K-pop band. And somehow this idea of like there's like a BTS branded performance art event, which is it's like it's interesting. It like in some sense it's interesting, but does it make any sense? Like does it make any sense, or does it matter if it makes any sense? And there was this kind of suspension of like disbelief that we felt was like had gone on for too long, and that's what we thought. Like we kind of thought that there was like a breaking point, and in a sense there was. Yeah, I mean the pandemic happened, and like of course that like shifted things a lot. But I don't think the experience economy has like died in any like meaningful sense. Of course, what has happened is like it definitely like accelerated like the like digitalization like of many like experiences. And I think because the price differential between setting up like a physical experience, doing like a physical thing, versus doing its like digital mirror image or like digital twin is like so insane. Like it's just like the cost of like between those two is like the cost difference is so insane, so insanely large, and only increasing, that I think there's kind of like no way back. I think this like the digitalization of like many like of more and more culture, more and more like experience in culture is like it's just like inevitable, just due to the fact of this the cost difference, which of course will also kind of bifurcate or create this like class different or introduce like a pretty deep class or like wealth based like difference between like physical and digital experiences. Yeah.
Any questions, maybe? Would anyone like to experience a question? If not, I would like to... Oh, we have a question here.
What do you think are the cultural signifiers of the new generations then if MTV was like this cultural point of the millennial generation? Do you think it's like TikTok or I don't know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, like TikTok will be like probably like a good, like a good answer. But I think it's more maybe on a higher level. I think it's like the feed in some sense. Like I mean, the thing that like MTV had, or a thing a thing such as like a broadcast entity or channel that MTV could have 30 years ago was like it could be directly. It could like own like a live experience, and that's of course something that like like a broadcast channel or like a TV can't really like do anymore. Of course, we get like more raw like direct information like through the feed. So I think, yeah, I would say like higher level it is the feed like whatever form or like whatever like app or like distribution channel it takes. I think it like at least for the time being it's the feed. Exactly. Yeah, and I think and that's also why a centralized meaning maker like MTV can't really exist, because there isn't this kind of fundamental like base layer of like shared experience that doesn't really exist anymore. Like it's just like the kind of cultural like foundation is just like too fragmented to like have to have that.
Any other question? If not, thank you very much, Marty, and thank you all. And I would like to invite you to Amnesia Scanner later tonight, and see you around. Have a good time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.